Welcome back to another episode of Building Up Your Business, the podcast. My name is Erica Dill with Operationally Up. I am your host. We are here to help your consumer goods and e-commerce business grow with maximum profitability. And today joining us is Barry Cohn. Barry, thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thanks for inviting me. I'm honored to be on your podcast.
We're going to talk today about what do you do when ICE comes to your business. It's a hot topic that's going on and still becoming an issue. And Barry is the perfect guest because he is the chief HR guy. He previously led really great employee benefits, supporting over 400 employers with strategic health insurance and benefit solutions, and spent 25 years in corporate banking. Barry also serves on several business and community boards, including the VICA and California Restaurant Association. With degrees from UCLA and Pepperdine, Barry brings both financial and HR expertise to the table. Today, he is the CEO of Jorgensen HR, where he works with employers to reduce the risk of compliance mistakes and costly lawsuits, helping leaders focus on growth. They're growing their business with confidence, which we are all about here is growing. And all those challenges that happen as you grow, we want you to learn from the pros. So we're going to just jump right in with Barry. And let's talk about kind of the big interesting question that most people want to know is what actually happens when ICE shows up at a business?
Well, ICE shows up at the business in two ways. The first way is unexpectedly. The second way is when they give you a notice that 3 days in the future, they're going to come and visit you. When they come and visit you with 3 days notice, that's usually an audit of your I-9 forms. But when they come in unexpectedly, they're usually looking for something, either an individual or groups of employees that they believe are in the country illegally or have criminal backgrounds, or because of the industry that a company is in, they may expect them to have a number of people but might be undocumented. And that's why they're showing up at your business.
Yeah, well, and that's, I think a lot of the scary part of it is those surprise things. If you get a notice, of course, there's anxiety leading up to it, but when they just show up at your door unexpectedly, you have no idea what they're looking for, and I'm sure that creates a lot of anxiety.
Well, when they
So,
show up at your business, they should have a warrant. When they show
oh,
up unexpectedly, usually they would have a warrant signed by a judge, and that'll tell you what they're looking for. Otherwise, it's an administrative meeting where they're just looking at I-9 forms and documentation for I-9s. But people are concerned right now with everything going on in the country, and they're not ready for these immigration people to come in, and they don't know what to do or they don't prepare for it.
so that's an interesting question, and I know we'll probably get into it more later on. But if they show up as a surprise, do they have to have a warrant? Can businesses ask for that, or is it not always a requirement?
Um, it will either have a warrant signed by a judge, or it'll be an administrative procedure where they won't have a warrant, but they may have documents saying they're going to audit your I-9 forms. But
Okay,
they
so
have
they
to
should
have
have some sort of paperwork.
they should have something, correct?
Okay. Okay. And I'm assuming it's within the business owner's rights to ask to see that.
Of course.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
but
that's good to know. So we kind of talked about already about being prepared a little bit. You talked about being I-9s. Give us a little bit more information about what these business owners in HR should have prepared for when ICE comes.
Okay. Well, first of all, every time a business hires an employee, they have to have an I-9 form completed within 3 days. It's completed by the employee and the employer, and they should be prepared by making sure those are correct, and that they're kept in a separate file or folder or binder for I-9 forms. We see when we do audits of companies and we see or we get new client, we go in and look at what their I-9s are. A lot of times they'll be in personnel files, which is the wrong place for it to be. And it's the wrong place for it to be because then you're giving immigration or the Department of Labor access to everything in your personnel file, not just the I-9 forms.
Oh.
So they should
Well,
have They should prepare themselves by having an I-9 form audit. They could do themselves, or they can hire someone like us to do it. But the other thing is that with everything going on in the media today, and the talk about all these ICE raids and unexpected visits, they should prepare for that ahead of time and say to themselves, well, ICE may be coming, they may not, but it may show up. If they show up, what do we do? Or how do we handle it? And a lot of companies just aren't prepared for that.
I mean, I can understand that, myself working in smaller, more family founder run businesses, you see, businesses who don't really understand how to be prepared all the time. And I know this is one of the things that HR has always said you have to have ready. And a lot of employers don't know. One of the things that people have always pointed companies to is E-Verify. Can you explain like the role that E-Verify plays in this?
Sure. E-Verify now has two services. The first is E-Verify, it's been there for a long time, and something called E-Verify Plus, which is new. Now, E-Verify basically is when you get the documents from your employee, your new employee, you go online and you check with E-Verify to make sure that their documents appear to be legal and they're legal. E-Verify will check social security numbers, they'll check driver's license, they'll check passports, green cards, and they'll verify. It's not 100% foolproof, but sure. The reason you might want to do that is that then you have a process in place. The process would be you meet with the employee, you have them fill out their portion, you look at all the documents, then you go to E-Verify and you get a report from E-Verify saying they passed, and you have that attached to the I-9 file. The issue with E-Verify or just doing it yourself, because companies now have remote locations and remote employees. During Sure. COVID, the U.S. government allowed people to do document checking by video like we are right now. But Sure. that went away. And so you can only look at documents in person. Okay? Oh. And if you have people that are not near your company's headquarters or out of state, you have to hire a company or a notary that will verify those documents. California does not accept notaries, so that's another issue. But with E-Verify Plus, you're now permitted to do video documentation. So you would do a video call. Yeah, do a video call on Zoom. I would probably record it with the employee's permission. You'd have them show their documents to the camera, and then you have it. And you attach that to the I-9 form, and if anything happens, you got it covered.
Wow, I did not know that. I did know that when COVID hit that, you could now do them remotely. I didn't know that that was rescinded. When was that rescinded?
I can't give you an exact date, but it was sometime early in 2024 is what my memory is
so it's been a moment, so yeah. Something people should absolutely be aware of, at least in the last year and a half, almost 2 years.
And
wow.
If an employer, if one of your clients or an employer or someone watching this video wants to do a remote verification, if you just Google remote verification of I-9s, they'll pop up a bunch of services that will do that.
Oh, that's great. Okay, well, that's good to know. I love when we go on to little tangents here because you find out all sorts of information that we didn't even think to cover. So I'm glad that we went down that rabbit hole. So, we're talking about ICE showing up. They may show up planned. They may show up unexpectedly. Oh, you know what? Before I go on, the other thing that you talked on that I'd love to touch on that's another tangent is you talked about having I-9s in a separate file. One of the things that I know from previous companies is that you should have a couple of separate files. One being just the traditional personnel, and then potentially like a HIPAA specific file. Do you want to give just a little bit of background, a little nugget of information about what type of separate files employers might want to have?
Sure, I'll be happy to. We recommend 3 files. One is the regular personnel file. One is the HIPAA file, which would be health information, medical, leaves of absence with doctor certifications, things that are confidential. And you might have a disciplinary file or a file that has those kind of information. And that usually, you can do it, most of it's digitally. Very rarely do we walk into a new client and everything's on paper, although
Sure.
we've done that recently with a company that has 6 restaurants and everything's on paper. And in order to review it, you got to review all the paperwork. But I'll tell you that, you know, small companies usually have challenges with compliance because they don't have time to check all the legal compliance. And that's part of what we do. But large companies have that issue too. We got hired a year and 9 months ago, January 2024, for a public company that does government work in the defense industry to review 1,500 I-9 forms.
Wow.
And they were supposed to be in one place. They were not. Some were paper, some were digital, some were in a payroll HR digital portal. And of the 1,500 we looked at, about 50% or 750 had issues.
Oh my gosh.
And if you research ICE and I-9 audits, they'll tell you that 60% of the time they find issues with I-9 forms.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what are these common issues that we're talking about?
Well, common issues. One common issue is that you have the documents that you have to show to be an employee is either they're in 3 categories: A, B, and C. A documents would be a
Okay.
passport card, or a green card, which permits you to work in this country. All those have expiration dates, especially green cards. Well, passports do every 10 years. And then if you don't want to show a passport, you can show a driver's license, and you can show, well, let's see here, driver's license and
Is birth certificate one of them?
yeah, birth
Or
certificate can work, driver's license
social
can work,
security card?
social security card can work, all those can work. One of the issues is that you don't ask for the correct documents, or you put the driver's license in A rather than B and C, and that would be a violation, and there's penalties for that. The other would be not having any documents at all, which we see a lot when we audit. And then the third one would be having a system to monitor or review all your I-9s, because certain documents expire, which basically is a green card. If a green card expires, you can't keep that employee on unless they have a renewal of that document. So you have to be able to check that document to make sure it was renewed. For driver's licenses, you don't have to do that. So,
Oh, interesting. Okay.
yeah, for the B and C document, you're fine. But if we walk into a company and has 100 employees, 50 employees, whatever it is, and we'll say, "So is your I-9s? Do you have a way of tracking when documents expire?" 90% of the time, they don't even know what we're talking about.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
the problem is, if ICE comes in or immigration comes in, and they're looking at I-9s and they find issues, that just opens up a can of worms. You may get a call from the Department of Labor later on, or the EEOC. So it's a matter of just making simple compliance, and it's not that difficult. Recently, we took on a restaurant group with 180 people, and we were onboarding a new employee, and we asked for documents. And he said to my consultant, "Well, I'm a citizen, I don't need to do this." And she says, "No, no, all citizens need to do it. You have to show a passport or this." Came back the next day and said, "Well, I'm not a citizen, but I have a green card." And he showed the green card. Well, red flags are flying, rockets are bursting in air. We're like, something's wrong here.
Yeah.
And we have a funny feeling that the owner of the company might have helped them get a green card quickly. We don't know. But it's just, you see different things.
Yeah.
And
Well, and it's nice to have a professional consultant or group that can kind of say, hey, this is how this goes, and these are the red flags to pay attention to,
yeah,
because you've been there before, you know how to
yeah.
do it.
Yeah, I'll give you another quick example. When you hire a new
Yeah.
employee, and you have 11 or 12 notices, brochures, or pamphlets to give them when you hire them. If you offer health insurance, there's another 8 or 9. So you have about 20 documents, notices, brochures you have to give an employee when they join you. Very rarely do we find that to be 100% accurate.
Sure.
So
Well, and I'm assuming, especially with I-9s and potential Department of Labor and everything, if you don't comply, I'm assuming there's fines involved.
yeah, there are. You wanna hear some of those fines?
Yeah. Yes
Okay.
and no.
Okay. If the I-9 form paperwork has violations like ABC. Oh, the other thing I didn't say is the other common thing is the employee gave you the documents, you filled that stuff in, but at the bottom you didn't sign it as an employer to verify that you
Oh,
saw it. So any of those kind of violations, the fine could be anywhere from $288 to
oh
$2,861
my
for a first.
gosh.
Okay. Now, if you knowingly employ unauthorized workers, the first offense can be as much as 5,724 per employee. Second offense up to 14,308. And third and subsequent offenses could be as high as 28,619.
Wow.
So those are fine, but those are civil fines. But you can also have criminal penalties. And a criminal penalty is $3,000 per employee. And
Wow.
and you could the owners of the company could be arrested on a criminal
Oh.
charge and face personal fines of 10,000 to 250,000 and be sentenced to 6 months in jail up to 20 years.
Are we
So
seeing a lot of these kind of things happen right now? Are we seeing an increase in these types of fines and penalties?
I don't think we're seeing a big increase in fines and penalties right now because, immigration hasn't really come in and audited that recently a lot. I mean, we have 400 and some employers, and I don't think any of them have been audited in the last 7 years.
Okay.
I bought Jorgensen 7 years ago, and Linda Harris owned it for the 18 years prior to me, and the two of us have very rarely seen an I-9 audit where there were fines. Because
Okay.
if good faith, if you say, here's our process, here's our procedure, here's what we do, I guess we missed one, we'll correct it and we'll make sure that we don't do that again, they're going to say, okay, no problem. It's the ones that where
Okay.
the employer gets argumentative or defensive.
Mm,
And that can happen on an ICE unexpected visit where the owner is not prepared and they go,
sure.
well, we don't want you here, leave. Or they get argumentative, they get defensive, and then it becomes, you know, the employer against ICE and it gets nasty. And those are the kind of things you want to cooperate based on what the law permits you to cooperate.
Well, and I think that's always the key in most, audit type of situations is not to
Mm-hmm.
get flustered, to stay focused, stick to just the facts,
Mm-hmm.
and try to be as helpful as possible, and everything will go as smooth as possible.
Exactly. And I will tell you, Jorgensen HR works with 40 different employment attorneys from about 30 different firms that either we do work for them or their clients. But at least 10 of them have sent out emails or webinars to their clients saying, if ICE comes, this is what you're permitted to do, this is what you're not permitted to do. And if you just keep up on everything, which is hard when you're a business owner, okay?
Yeah.
But if you try to keep up with everything, or you hire someone to help you keep up with the compliance, you'll be okay. You're not going to get in
Yeah.
trouble.
And that's good. And I think one of the things that you said that really kind of stuck with me is it's all in good faith, right? So if you can show that you have a procedure and you show that you have a process and you've done your due diligence to the best of your ability, they are, willing to be, let's call it flexible,
Hmm.
and work with you. But that's a good lesson of you need to be prepared and you need to understand the importance of these things and to have a process in place. And I know so many employers can't really point to a solid process.
Exactly. And we actually walked into a trucking company about 6 months ago as a new client. And the first thing the consultant does is, if they don't have any issues, is let's see your new hire package and your I-9 forms. And he said, what's an I-9 form?
Mm.
And he had 28 employees driving trucks. He had no I-9s at all. And it was like, oh, we haven't seen that before.
Oops.
And the
Well,
other
it's a good
thing is,
thing they had you.
Yeah. The other thing to mention about I-9 forms are they are dated and they're revised. And the latest revision was in 2024. But we did walk into a company earlier this year and they still were using one from 1988.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah.
I'm
So
surprised they got a hold of something from 1988.
I think they started using it in 1988 and just kept using the
Just
same form.
kept photocopying it.
Yeah, exactly.
So, and that's a good question. You kind of had mentioned green cards need to be updated. Do passports, if passports expire, do they need to do a new form for that?
Well, passports expire every 10 years, but if you're a U.S. citizen, you gave them a passport, the employer doesn't have the right to ask you for additional documentation.
Okay.
So once you show them the passport, that's all you need to do.
Okay, that's good. So, I do kind of want to. I love the tangents we're getting down because this is like such great information, and I've already learned something new. But let's go back to asking a little bit more about the actual ICE raids and the situations people might get into. So, if ICE shows up, obviously, if it's planned, they have a little bit of notice and they know what to be prepared.
Mm-hmm.
If they don't, the first thing that they could do is ask for paperwork. What is kind of the next steps? I kind of want to walk through the steps so that it can
Okay.
put the business minds at ease so they know what to do when they show
Okay.
up.
If the immigration is just doing an I-9 audit, they're going to ask you for some documents, like your I-9 form, the supporting documents, a list of current and former employees for a certain period of time, payroll records, or e-verify. That's it. So if you have that in one place, you show it to them. Now, if they come in without a warrant, they're only permitted to be in public space, not private space,
Oh,
unless you invite
interesting.
them. So let's assume you're a restaurant. We have a lot of restaurants, probably 100 restaurants that we do some kind of work for. They can ICE can come in and without a warrant, and they can be in the dining area. They can't go to the kitchen. They can't go to the dishwasher. They can't go to any private offices in the back unless they have a warrant. And if they come in with a warrant, you want to read the warrant carefully. It will spell out what they're looking for and what they want to review and where they want to go. But the first thing an employer should do if ICE walks in is call their employment attorney or immigration attorney immediately and let them know that immigration has arrived. That might be after they show you the warrant or they tell you we don't have a warrant, but you have to call that. And so a smaller company, most of our companies are family owned, or a couple guys, a couple people own it, husband and
Sure.
wife, or a couple people. They would be the one that would be notified. Let somebody know that ICE came. If it's a larger company or it's a remote location, like there's 5 locations for the company or 5 warehouses, somebody in the company is probably appointed to be that liaison if someone comes in off the street. So the best thing to do is just ask them for their warrant, ask what they're there for, and comply, be cooperative. Don't be belligerent, angry, tell them no. Now if they don't have a warrant and they want to go into private areas, you can tell them no because it's a private area. You're permitted to be in public areas, and just go from there. That's why it's really good if the I-9 files are in a notebook, which is the old-fashioned way of doing it. My company, we about 20 people. Our I-9s are in the cloud in AWS, but they're all in one place. So we would sit somebody down and say, here's all the employee files and here's all the I-9s. There's a special folder that says I-9s, and every I-9's there. Now, documentation, I mentioned ABC. What I didn't mention is you don't have to keep copies of it. You can
Oh,
if
you
you
don't?
want.
Okay.
You don't have to. So some companies have a policy of not just looking at it and jotting down the numbers, and other companies want a copy of it. One of the problem areas is if sometimes you ask for a copy and sometimes you don't, because there's no consistency. So
So
I kind
stick
of
with
went off on a
one.
tangent. Yeah, but I hope I answered your question of what to do if they
No,
come in.
yeah, absolutely. Like I said, these tangents are great because we're getting a bunch of information I didn't even think to capture down. So that's interesting. If you sit them down with, and you have a folder, and I love the idea of having just a specific I-9 folder. Do you have to provide them with a computer? Do you just put it onto a USB? How does that work?
Um, Usually they'll have a computer or something that they could download that data, and then you can permit them to do that. I wouldn't let them to access your computer system. I would do it for them if they
Gotcha.
had a USB. But yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Just put them on a USB and pass them over.
yeah, that
Now,
could
you
work.
mentioned they potentially could access payroll records.
Hmm.
A lot of companies that I work with have that in, a Bamboo HR or some other cloud-based infrastructure. How do you give
Right.
access to that?
Well, um, in that case, whether it's like a payroll company like Paylocity or ADP or Paychex or
Or
Bamboo
ADP or
HR or
Paychecks,
something,
yeah.
you could export the information from the payroll system and give it to them.
Okay.
I wouldn't recommend have sitting them at a computer and logging into your payroll
And
system and
logging
saying,
in.
here it is. But for example, one of the things um, we do a lot of wage and hour audits for defense employment attorneys for PAGA lawsuits.
Sure.
And so what we do is we basically ask the company to export the data from the payroll system into an Excel spreadsheet. And then you can
Okay.
give them the Excel spreadsheet.
Got it. Okay. And you may have a lot of Excel spreadsheets with a lot of different team members, but I guess at that point it's not really your problem as the business owner that there's a lot of information.
Yeah. As a quick example, we just got a call from a lawyer in Orange County. It's a PAGA lawsuit. It's a restaurant. It's actually a pizza restaurant.
Mm.
And they have 38 employees, but they pay twice a month. So that's 76 paychecks a month times 12. You gather that would be close to 900 employment records. And what they want to do is audit those to make sure they're good, and they figure out what the possible penalties are. So it's a lot of payroll records that they're looking at.
Yeah.
So if you
Yeah.
just export it, if you export the pay stubs into a spreadsheet, easy.
Got it. Got it. Easy to do.
Yeah.
So, what are, we kind of talked about like staying calm, being cooperative. What are some of the other business mistakes that you would see in some of the ways some of these ICE raids are
Uh,
happening?
that's a good question. I think one of the biggest mistakes that I've heard of, I haven't seen myself, is an employer telling their employees, don't talk to ICE. Okay?
Okay.
ICE has a right, based on what their warrant says, to talk to employees. And so they should have them talk to employees and be cooperative. But, some employers want to protect their employees, um,
Sure.
and get rid of ICE. And so that's a mistake I've heard of a lot of
Yeah.
times from various people. And the
Well,
other
and
thing I've heard, what, I'm sorry,
oh
go
no,
ahead.
please go ahead. Continue.
No, the other thing I've seen and I've heard of, and what you probably see in the media is ICE comes in, and all of a sudden employees start running. And the reason they're running is because they know they're undocumented, but no employer should be having them on the payroll unless they provided the documents on the I-9. So what I would tell my employees ahead of time is, especially if I'm a manufacturer, distributor, warehouse, car wash, those kinds of things. You gave me an I-9 form. We have the documents. You're okay. If they come in, we'll show them the documents you gave us. I think what they're concerned about is that they're going to be arrested regardless of whether the documents are there. And I don't think that's the case. Now, originally, if you listen to certain media, they're looking for criminals, but
Sure.
also they're going, well, we know that a lot of people in industry ABC have a lot of immigrant labor, and we think a lot of them aren't documented, so we're just going to go into those companies. And that's when you see 400 people get arrested, um, those kinds of things. But it's just a
And
matter of letting your employees know what could happen, and if it happens, here's what you need to do, and that's basically it.
Well, and I think that's a lot of the challenges that people are having right now is the uncertainty, and there's a lot of fear and concern.
Yep.
And I think to your point, having those conversations, you know, being informed about how these audits are happening and what to do to be prepared, that really can help, you know, prevent some of these potential wrong situations happen just by having those conversations with your team members.
Yeah, agreed. And I think that the employer needs to prepare themselves, and they need to have meetings with their employees to let them know if this happens, which it probably wouldn't, but if it does, this is what we're going to do, and this is what you guys can do.
And, you know, it goes back to what I'm hearing is, and, you know, in our last kind of moments, I want to make sure that we get those nuggets out. It sounds like there's two main things that we're talking about in how to put your mind at ease and be prepared no matter what the future brings. And that's number one is to have a process in place for collecting and record keeping that I-9 information. And number two, knowing your rights and knowing what's going to happen should an audit occur, and communicating that with your team so
Right.
that
I would
everybody
say
feels a little more comfortable.
yeah, I would say three things. The first two, you're
Okay.
right, you know, but the third is just to make sure if they come in that you've discussed with senior management ahead of time what your process is, what we're going to
Okay.
do if they come in. Okay. So if you're going to audit I-9s, you have a process for that. And if they're just coming in, that you've already talked about it. So you already have a game plan.
Well, and one of the things that I always encourage companies to do, especially when they have a process, is to put it down on a piece of paper, because when things happen, people's minds just go blank. They get scared, they get anxious, they don't remember what people said. And so having a process or a procedure written down, all they need to remember is go get the piece of paper located here. So if you have an I-9
Right.
folder, go open the folder to the front page and it says this is the process for when this happens. And then
Exactly.
that is then they don't have to worry about memorizing who do they need to call, what do they need to do, or like you said, if you're going to call an attorney, where's that person's phone number? Do I need to go
And,
Google it? No, it's on right on the top of the process. Call this
yeah.
person and here's the number.
Exactly. I agree 100%, and that's what we recommend to our clients.
That's great.
It's
I love
common
that.
sense.
Barry, it is, well, I hope it's common sense, but sometimes, it, without fault, sometimes business owners get overwhelmed, and, you know, all of these things are being thrown at them, and hiring and employee labor law management can kind of slip by the wayside. So that's why we like to talk about it here.
Yeah, I think also companies with under 100 employees usually do not have a full-time HR person that was trained.
Yep.
So someone's stuck with it. It's an office manager, a controller, a spouse, someone in the company that's got to do all that, plus everything else they do. Companies over 100 employees sometimes will have an HR person, but they're usually overworked, maybe underpaid, and don't have time to do everything they need to do.
Yep.
And compliance wise. And that's one of the reasons that we send out emails on a regular basis, 3 to 5 a month, whenever there's something to do with HR or labor law or regulations that changed, to let clients know or people know that here's something new you need to know.
Is that a newsletter that you provide people?
It's not really a newsletter, it's just an email.
Oh, okay.
And a link to an article and a blog. But for example, in the state of Oregon right now, there's a new law as of October 1 regarding paid sick leave. Well, we get updates on all laws in every city, county, state on a monthly basis. We have a large client who's headquartered in Portland. First thing we did was we sent her that email.
Yeah.
If you're not aware of this already, here's the new law.
Here's a
But
new
what,
law.
what concerns me is, well, let me back up. 50% of the people we send them to open it and read it, but 50% don't.
Don't.
And I'm concerned about the ones that don't open and read it because they're missing vital information.
Yeah. It's not stuff that you want to play around with, especially in California.
Yeah.
The Department of Labor I've heard of many issues, and that can get pretty costly if you don't,
Yeah.
especially if
In
you're looking at
California,
labor
you
laws.
have a Department of Labor, you have the Cal OSHA, you have an industrial agency, and there might be one more I'm not thinking of, but you have 3 or 4 agencies that are sending, that have rules and regulations. So you
It's a
got to keep
lot.
up with them. Yep.
You do. Well, Barry, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thanks for having me. I hope the people that watch the podcast or listen to it get great information. And that's what we're here to do, is help people stay in compliance.
Yeah, well, and it's so important, especially as things keep changing in our economy and our government. So, thank you again for joining us for another episode of Building Up Your Business, the podcast. I've been your host, Erica Doe with Operationally Up. Remember, from bombs to order fulfillment, marketing to taxes, learn the stuff from the pros before you step in it. We'll be back here in another 2 weeks for another great episode. And until then, have a wonderful week. Bye.